Most parents don't lose their teenagers' trust in one big moment. They lose it in 100 small ones they never even noticed. And here's what makes that so painful. Most of the time, the parent was trying to help. They were trying to guide, protect, correct, or connect. They thought they were doing the right thing. And meanwhile, quietly, underneath the surface, their teen was learning something very different about whether they were truly safe to be honest with. That's what this video is really about. Not the dramatic blowups, not the slammed doors, but the slow, invisible erosion that happens long before any of that. And more importantly, what you can actually do to reverse it. Because here's what almost no one tells you: trust with a teenager doesn't work the way most parents assume it does. And if you're operating on the wrong model, you can be doing all the right things and still be building distance without realizing it. Let's start with a moment you've probably lived. Your teen comes home from school, something clearly happened. Maybe they're quiet, maybe they seem off, maybe there's an edge in their voice when they say nothing to your perfectly reasonable question of how their day was. And your instinct, because you love them and you're paying attention, is to push a little. Ask again. Try a different angle. You want to help. You want to know. And they shut down completely. You walk away feeling confused, maybe a little hurt, wondering what you did wrong or whether your kid is just being difficult. Here's what's actually happening in that moment. And this is the first piece of the puzzle. Your teenager's brain is going through one of the most intense reorganizations in human development. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic, long-term thinking, and emotional regulation, is still years away from being finished. But the emotional and threat detection systems, those are running at full power, which means when a teen is already emotionally activated, even a well-meaning question can register in their nervous system as pressure, as scrutiny, sometimes even as threat. They're not being dramatic. Their brain is genuinely reading the situation differently than yours is. And this is where the first invisible trust break tends to happen. Not because the parent did something wrong, but because the parent's response to the teen's emotional state sends a signal the parent never intended. When a teen shuts down and a parent pushes, the teen's nervous system learns something. It learns that their emotional state will be met with more pressure, not more space. And over time, that pattern teaches them that being emotionally honest around you costs something. So they stop being emotionally honest, not all at once, gradually, the way water slowly changes the shape of stone. Now, here's the part that most parenting content completely misses. And this genuinely changed how I think about this. The behaviors that parents most often label as attitude, defiance, or distance are almost never about the parent at all in the moment they happen. They are almost always about something the teen is trying to protect. And that's the reframe that matters. When your teen gets defensive, they're protecting something they're not sure is safe. When they get dismissive, they're managing a feeling they don't have words for yet. When they say nothing happened when something clearly did, they're not lying to be difficult. They're running a quiet calculation about whether the cost of honesty is worth it. That calculation is based entirely on their accumulated experience of what happens when they are honest with you. This is what I think about when I remember a conversation I had with my own teenager, maybe 2 years ago now. They had said something to me, something small, a little vulnerable, and I had responded with what I thought was helpful advice. Practical, solution-focused. I thought I was being a good parent. They went quiet in a way I had learned to recognize. And later, much later, they told me that in that moment, they had felt like I hadn't really heard them, that I jumped to fixing instead of just being with them in it. I've thought about that conversation a lot because I wasn't wrong to want to help, but I had mistaken the goal. The goal in that moment wasn't to solve anything. The goal was to be a place where they felt safe enough to actually say what was real. And I had missed it while trying to do the right thing. That's what this is really about. So let's go a layer deeper, because the trust erosion pattern has a specific shape. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. It usually follows three stages. The first stage is testing. Teens, especially in early adolescence, are running constant quiet tests. Not consciously, they're not plotting, but developmentally, they are wired to begin separating their inner world from their parents' view of them. They're building a self. And part of building a self is figuring out which parts of that self are safe to share. So they'll share something small, a thought, an opinion, a frustration, and they watch. Not the words you say, but how you make them feel when they say it. If they feel dismissed, corrected, lectured, or minimized, even once, even gently, the test result comes back negative. This part of me is not safe here. And they file that away. The second stage is selective editing. This is the phase where parents start noticing their teen talking to them less, but they can't quite figure out when that shift happened. It happened during the testing phase. The teen didn't stop talking, they started editing, they stopped bringing the things that had been met with pressure or judgment, and they started bringing only the things that felt safe or neutral. Which means by the time a parent realizes their teen isn't opening up, the selective editing has already been happening for months, sometimes longer. The third stage is the one parents feel most acutely: full withdrawal. This is when the teen stops initiating almost entirely, when every conversation feels surface level, when you know something is wrong but they won't let you in. And what's painful about this stage is that parents often respond with more pressure, more rules, more attempts to force openness because they're scared. And that fear is completely understandable, but it often accelerates the withdrawal instead of reversing it. Here is the insight that genuinely surprises most parents when they hear it. You cannot rebuild trust with a teenager by convincing them to open up. You rebuild it by consistently proving, through your reactions, that openness is safe. That's it. That's the whole mechanism. Your teen is not withholding because they don't want closeness. Most teens desperately want closeness with their parents. They withhold because their nervous system has learned, through real experience, that certain kinds of honesty come with a cost. The goal is to change what their nervous system has learned, and you do that one small interaction at a time. So, what does that actually look like? When your teen says something you disagree with, your instinct might be to correct it immediately. That's natural. But correction in the wrong moment sends a signal that you're more invested in the right answer than in them. Instead, get curious first. Not performatively curious. Actually curious. What do they mean? Where is that coming from? What does it feel like to be them holding that view right now? When you ask a question and they give you a one-word answer, the instinct is to ask another question. But what a one-word answer usually signals is not that they don't want to talk. It signals that the question felt like an evaluation, like you were looking for a particular answer and they weren't sure they had it. Try responding to the one-word answer with something that isn't another question, something that just acknowledges, something that says, I'm here, I'm not grading this, there's no wrong response. That shift in texture changes the entire dynamic. And here is the lesser-known piece that I think is the most important one in this whole video. Most parents focus on what they say, but teenagers make trust decisions based almost entirely on how they feel after the conversation ends, not during, after. Do they feel lighter or heavier? Do they feel seen or managed? Do they feel like they just had a real moment with a parent who actually knows them? Or do they feel like they just reported in for inspection? That felt sense after the interaction is what gets encoded. That's what gets filed under safe or not safe. And it accumulates over time into either a growing openness or a growing distance. You can say all the right things and still leave your teen feeling heavier. And you can stumble through a conversation imperfectly and still leave them feeling known. The words matter less than the emotional residue. This also means something important for parents who feel like they've already lost the closeness and don't know how to get it back. You don't need a big conversation. You don't need a breakthrough moment. You don't need to address the distance directly or have a talk about having talks. You need a series of small interactions where they feel consistently lighter when you walk away. That's how the nervous system starts to revise its conclusions. Slowly, through accumulated evidence, one moment at a time, the teen who slams the door and says, "You don't understand," the one who gives you nothing but eye rolls, the one who seems to have replaced you entirely with their friends, that teen is not moving away from you because they don't need you anymore. They're moving because connection with you currently comes with too much friction, too much pressure, too much of having to manage your reaction while also managing their own feelings. Your job is not to get them to come back. Your job is to become worth coming back to. And I say that with complete compassion because that is genuinely hard work, especially when you're also grieving the version of your child who used to run toward you, especially when their distance feels like rejection when it isn't. It was never rejection. It was always a signal that something in the pattern needed to shift. And when you learn to read the signal instead of react to the surface behavior, something changes, not just in how you respond, in who you become in that relationship. You stop being someone they have to manage, and you start becoming their emotional home, a place they know they can bring the real version of themselves without it costing anything. That is the goal. Not a perfectly obedient teen, not a teen who tells you everything, a teen who knows deep in their nervous system that you are safe, that you can hold them without fixing them, that you're interested in who they actually are, not just who you hope they'd be. And when they know that, they come back, not because you forced it, because you made it worth it. And when you understand that, something shifts. You stop trying to force closeness, and you start becoming a place your teen can come back to. Not perfectly, not all at once, but slowly, in the same way the distance was created, one interaction at a time.